I know where there's some, right here in the hall, clerk.
No, Molly, I have
Hi, welcome back to the second part of the work we're going to do on this this turntable, this Zenith Cobramatic from 1951. And as you will recall, the rollers here need some attention, and I need to order these, so I need to get them out first, so I can get the order underway. And the way this works, I think I covered this in the previous video, but I'm not sure. The way this appears to work is the motor is right under here, and the motor has its shaft pushes up against this idler wheel, this big idler wheel. And as the idler wheel turns, this lever first turns on. Here's the on-off switch right here, by the way. So that's off. You turn this way, switch activates the motor starts turning, this idler wheel starts turning, and in theory, this wheel on top of the idler turns as well. Sure, it has a name, I just don't know what it is. But to adjust the speed, remember the motor and the idler wheel run at a constant speed, but this rubs up against the underside of the platter itself. So this, as it starts at the very outer ring, is running as fast as it's going to run, and as it moves toward the inner part of this idler wheel, it slows down and slows down and slows down until it's running, what was it, 16, something like that, RPM. So this is a two-part effort. The first part is to get this assembly off so I can get that wheel off, and then we'll worry about the motor and the big idler wheel. Now, one thing of concern that I noticed right away was right here. I don't know if that shows up on camera or not, but right here between the idler wheel and this chassis, there's no space. And that can't be right. That means this wheel is rubbing against this thing as the motor tries to turn it. So there's something wrong. It was either taken apart and not put back together with a spacer, or with too many spacers, or there's a spacer missing where it gets bolted up underneath. I don't know yet. But for this video, we'll start here. We'll take this assembly appears to hold this under pressure. This is spring steel, so holds this under pressure as this slides back and forth. I see down here also, if you watch, as you go into the off position, it moves the motor right here. And you can see it right here with this. It moves the motor away from this idler wheel. So that relieves the pressure, and the idler wheel shouldn't have a dent, but it has a huge one right here. Just enormous. Let's see if I can shine a little light on that. I don't know if that helps or not, but it's a biggie. So there's no salvaging this. There certainly isn't any salvaging of this guy. So we'll start by taking this apart. And see, this should at some point lift up off here. It does have a bracket that reaches down to move the motor, but I think it's just held in place by these sliders. We'll see. We shall see. I've always been an appreciator of how technology marches on. Oh yeah, now you can see it just loosened up, just relaxed. And the technological leap between the prior generation and this generation of turntable is really quite extra. Look at that. That's great. Really quite extraordinary. So it's not obvious to me how that comes off. Oh, it might be just held on by this spring. Oh, that would be interesting. And that looks like that's the case. So take this bracket off, and this will just pop off. There's a felt washer right there to hold oil. I don't know what that stuff is. I probably don't want to know. So this will be a pretty easy thing to do. I need to clean the old grease off here, of course. But remove these two bolts. Sorry, these two bolts right here. This should pop right off, and I can drop it in the mail to a guy who rebuilds them. Look how damaged that is. It's melted. It's melted there, and it's melted there. So the platter stuck while the motor was turning, it looks to me like. That looks like a bit of this right there. Huh, interesting. Okay. Next, I'll turn it over and we'll look at the motor side. And before I turned it over, I anchored these, the tone arm and the what do you call this thing? Thing that holds the records down. Yeah, that's it. That's the thing that holds the records down. It's probably in the parts list that way, right? All right. Anyway, I'll turn this over and we'll take a look. All right, here's the underside. All I did was move my feet from the top to the bottom. So now it stands up upside down. And since I've taped down the thing that holds the records down and the toner, they aren't flopping around underneath. So a couple of things to do here. One is to, probably, there's no probably about it. There are two wire harnesses here. This one, with its two plugs, is the AC from the chassis for this motor. And it is stiff as a board. It looks like old zip cord. It's probably original, but boy, it's just stiff, and I'm afraid, it doesn't look like it's going to crack, but it's really, I will replace this. So I'll replace this cord. The other one is a shielded cable with an RCA-like connector here. This shielded cable carries the signal from the cartridge in the tone arm through these tiny little wires and into it and on to the chassis for amplification. This I will not replace. However, I will unsolder these two wires from the cartridge so that I can take the tone arm off, which is right here. So the tone arm is this assembly, and this rather simple C-ring arrangement is the thing that holds the records down. But that's for later. Right now, I'm going to get this off, and we'll start by, oh geez, that wire is stiff. That is the stiffest stuff. We'll start by pulling these little retainers. Just hold this wire down to this chassis. So I'll pry that up so I can get the wire out of the way. Then I'll take these two 1/4-inch bolts off, and that should, there's a spring attaching that to that. That's the motor retraction spring, or return spring rather. So that needs to come off. But once I have that and that out, and I pull the motor back, that should just come right out of there. We'll see. We shall see. get at it. Oop, need to take that spring loose first. Yeah, that was pretty easy. Okay. This bracket is what I have to examine once this comes apart, because again this roller is sitting right down on there, and that can't be right. So this may be an adjustment right here. I'm not sure. See if we can figure that out after the fact. Okay. Oh, it's interesting. It's a brass or bronze, might be bronze. It's just a bronze shaft with a bushing that this sits on. I don't see any rub marks, interestingly enough. I see dirt and some old rubber, but I don't see any rub marks. So apparently this was not rubbing on there. It was darned close. Interesting. Yeah, you can see the divot right there in this idler wheel. And I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's really seriously cracked around here. So the rubber on this is completely shot, can't be restored. But I needed to get it out so I can send it off and have it replaced, which I will do. This this holder, I'm not sure what that's for. Let's see if I have a hand. Let's see what we see here. Oh man, that is tight. All I'm turning is this shaft on the press fit mounting. So I'll put some oil in there and see if I can get that to come loose later. But since we're here, let's take a look at the motor. The motor shaft is right here, and it turns pretty freely. Well, that's good news. The motor is cushioned by some rubber bushings right here and here, and a couple more back here. And yeah, all right. What I'll do is take some reference photos to make sure I don't screw this up when I put it back together. But then now I've got some soldering to do. I want to unsolder these. I want to take the little tiny Scotch locks, or one little tiny Scotch lock for the power. So I'm going to take the power core off and away. I have to remember to keep this end of it because that's a unique piece, one of a kind. So I'll desolder these and get the length of this cord and find another to replace it. Yeah, the power goes to this switch, which is the on-off switch, and then comes back to the motor, one side, and the other side there's the the other side of the power cord goes to this side, and then we have this solenoid right here with a resistor, and I don't know yet what that does. That might be the end of the record sensor. Probably is, in fact. So I will do all this soldering off camera, and I will pull the motor off camera, and then we'll take a look at it. Okay, here's the motor. It's a sheeted pole motor like they almost all are in this vintage. The motor mounts are pretty shot. So we've ordered new motor mounts coming from the Voice of Music folks, as well as the drive wheel that this drives, and the idler wheel that goes back and forth on top of that. So those are on the way. The motor turns pretty freely. I'm going to take it apart, clean it up, and lube it up anyway. But as I said, that's asbestos, and I want to get rid of it. Or not, I can't get rid of it. I could, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna encapsulate it. You'll notice on here there are actually two windings. It's the primary winding right here for the motor. Then there's a second winding right here. And what this one is doing is when this is energized with 115, 120, whatever it is, turns the motor, of course. This guy is a a secondary transformer, or secondary coil that picks up about 5.5 volts for a electromagnet. I might be able to show you here on the turntable. Bear with me while I make you ill. Right there is an electromagnet, and when it's energized, it swings this piece over like that. And we'll get into what that does and why that exists in a bit. But it's in the upper, on the deck itself, is this switch. This is the record change switch. It's a momentary switch. You push it over, and it causes the turntable to go into action and bring the second record down. And this solenoid is part of that action, because when you trip this, the solenoid has the 5.3 or whatever it is volts on one side. When you trip this switch up here, it grounds it and activates it, energizes it, and it pulls this lever that way. But that's why there's a secondary winding on the motor. Right here. And it's not asbestos covered, of course. So what I'll do is take the rotor out. I will clean the bearing shafts, although bushing shaft rather. As I said, it moves pretty easily right now. And I'll make sure that there's oil inside these end caps. Who knows the last time they were oiled. There should be a piece of felt and maybe inside there that holds oil and a bit of a reserve for the bronze bushing that's also in there. So we'll do that next. All right, the motor mounts are held in place with these C-clips. Have to use a screwdriver. Then there's a steel washer. And the motor, the mount itself. Okay, put those in here. And this mount should just lift off as it does. These are the guys we're replacing. Still are that one. Those are supposed to be the same. So you'll see the motor probably hangs in one way or another to flatten this one almost entirely. But those will get replaced. And then the bottom is a felt washer, fiber washer for each one of these. Keep track of those. The bearings, the end caps here, are held in place by these long brass screws with a nut right there and a screw head there. I don't know that they're brass all the way through. I expect not. I expect they're steel. There's a fiber or a felt washer, an oil keeper right there. It will have to be re-lubricated when we put it all back together. The roller, I can't tell if that's rust or texture. It looks a little bit like rust. I might have to treat that. And then, it's texture. Now I can see it better. It might be rusty texture, but they have textured this wheel so that it grabs the drive wheel better. Yeah. And as I said, or I might have said, this is a shaded pole, simple shaded pole AC motor. Here are the shades, these two copper windings, shade the part of this magnetic, well, this winding turns all of this into an electromagnet, and because it's AC, it keeps changing phase back and forth. The shaded part of that to slightly change the phase of this part, this half of this magnet, which draws the motor to rotate in that direction. Without this, the motor would just ratchet back and forth because 60 cycles is, it's a sine wave going in there, and it would try to draw it one way and then try to draw it the other way and try to draw it one way and try to draw it the other way. And to get this motor started, they added this technology in the, 1800, something like that, 1890 rather. Which changes the phase of this half of this electromagnet, changes the phase of this half slightly so that the motor is tempted to run in that direction. And once it starts, it keeps going. These are very low torque motors at startup. They can't start with much of a load at all. It's better to have the motor running before it engages a load. But they're as simple as dirt. The bearings will go if they never get lubricated. If you load it too hard, you can burn it up, but they're pretty bulletproof, and they last for decades, as this one probably attests. I have not tried it yet, but I have pretty high faith that it'll work. You'll also notice that there is a fan, a little fan on each end of this motor. These motors run a little hot. Well, actually, they run quite hot. And that fan is required to keep everything cooled down to a manageable extent. But there's no end play or no back and forth play on the bearings at all. There's a little bit of end play, but there always is. So let's take this apart. Oop. Gonna have to get a wrench on that little nut. I'll be right back. Alright, I've loosened both of these. And it's actually it's a nut with this brass shaft on it. Which is kind of cool. So there's the nut, the washer, the standoff, looks like aluminum standoff, and the screw itself. We'll leave that in place right now. Same thing on this side, the brass nut, washer, aluminum standoff. On this side is the bracket for the third motor mount, which goes with that. And then we can take these out. And then the end caps will come free. And there's our rotor. And here's our other end cap. There might be, looks like, I want to be careful, it looks to me like there might be a washer right there. Yep, that I don't want to lose. So I have to be cautious about that. Where are my tweezers? Can't find them. Oh, they're upstairs. So I have to be very careful not to lose that and to remember where it goes. Which probably means there's one on the other side too. Yeah, you can see in here perhaps. This is the bushing right here. And there's a material, felt-like material back in here that holds the oil, which probably means this is a centered brass or bronze bushing. Centered bronze, as far as I understand it, is in essence bronze with pores. Bronze is harder than brass, and when you get this, not completely soaked, but you get this felt-like material back in here, wet with oil, the oil actually works its way through the pores in the bronze and lubricates the surface in here. So our task here is to get some oil back in here. I've read over the years people put 30-weight motor oil in it. One guy puts automatic transmission fluid in it because automatic transmission fluid is a really high-grade lubricant with lots of detergents. I personally put clockmaker's oil in here. Some will put 3-in-1 oil, and I've done that in the past. But I've also read reports that 3-in-1 oil gets old and gummy more quickly than anything else. So not to speak poorly of 3-in-1 oil, it's been around forever and is used for everything. But that's what I've heard. I don't know if it's true or not. What I'm going to put in here is some watchmaker's oil. So there's that side. This side is exactly the same, except I don't see a washer in there. And I probably can't fit this bushing, yeah, I can't pass this rotor, but I don't need to. I just need to be able to get some oil right down in here, which is easy to do. So the rotor looks fine. I will clean it up. I'll get some oil in those spots. I'll reassemble it. Try not to fix that washer for in here. And then we'll give it a test run. Okay, next I'll take it out the garage and mask all this off and spray this with clear coat. And then I'll do a wrap of aluminized tape and finish it up. Alright, we're back. I have the motor cleaned up. I have the bushings lubricated. They're nice and there's no flopping around, so that's good. The rotor spins freely. I have the asbestos tape sealed off with a coat of clear coat and then covered with this aluminized tape. And that should do it. What we're going to do now is try this motor, see if it works. And what I'm going to do is stupid. So you shouldn't do it at all. In fact, you shouldn't even watch me do it. That's how stupid it is. But I'm going to do it anyway. I have my Variac set up right here with an on and off switch. I have a cable plugged in to the Variac here. I'm going to put these clips on there. Red one. For a little fumbling around. And the black one around here, making sure that they aren't in proximity. The other end of the black one will go to this. So on the other side of this winding, I'm going to put the red cord right there. And again, keeping all these away from one another as best I can. And as I said, don't do this at home. In fact, don't watch me do it. But I'm going to do it anyway. And the vice grip, this giant vice grip, is here because these motors generate a little bit of torque, not a lot, but a bit. And I just don't want it to torque itself spinning off into the universe at some high rate of speed and shorting all these wires that I have here. So I'm just going to very gently fasten that right there. Just to, when it spins up, presuming it spins up, when it spins up, it won't flop off the bench into my lap where I don't want it. All right, Cord's plugged in. Already set this to the variac to about 116, 17 volts, something like that. All I have to do is double check my wiring, make sure nothing is touching anything else, and turn it on. Let's see. Moment of truth. Ah, very nice. It's louder than I would like, but it might be because it's on the bench. It probably is. Let me put a bit of cushion under it here. Let's see if this quietens it down a bit. And it looks like it didn't have enough torque to flip over too badly, so I'll just, yeah, we'll see if it'll stay put right there. Yeah, it's spinning nicely. I can still hear this bench top vibrate. I have ordered new engine bushings, motor bushings rather, engine bushings, motor bushings. They're on their way, along with the two rotors for the turntable itself. Let's see. Where's that bracket? Here it is. Yeah, so I've ordered new ones of these, and they're coming. As you can see, this one looks almost new, and this one is squished flat on a pancake, so the motor puts a fair amount of pressure on these. But it's running, and that's all I expect of it. 1951 shaded pole motor isn't going to be terribly quiet. I did a Gerard, or Gerard, I can't remember how you pronounce that, turntable from England with the quietest motor I've ever heard. Not terribly powerful, but very quiet. So it doesn't surprise me that this is a bit noisy. Hopefully it'll quieten down when it's back in its motor mounts. Alright, that's done. Take this dangerous stuff away. And move on to the next thing. Okay, the rubber grommets came in from the Voice of Music folks. They're not the same color, and they're not quite the same as the original, but it's as close as they had, and I didn't want to spend a lot of time trying to find the exact replacement, because I think this will work just fine. I ordered 6 because when I get done with this full set, I've got another turntable to do, just like it, so I'll need them then too. So these should just pop out of the hole. And the new one should pop in. Pop being a non-operative word. Yeah, they're pretty close. Old on the left, new on the right. Color is different, but again, that's just fine. So let me see if I can get that in there. We had I'm behind on this work because we had a terrific freezing rainstorm here. Took out power for almost 5 days. So it was a bit chilly around the old household. But power came back and internet connectivity came back the next day. So we're good now. So I will replace this one and show you the end result. All right, there they are. I just noticed, and I don't know why I didn't notice it before, this rust is on here. It's a light coating of surface rust, but I want to get that off before I start to reassemble these two pieces. So what I'll do is take these back out and polish this up to get rid of that slight rusty spot right there, or those rusty spots. Okay, there we go. Polished those that surface rust off. Even gave the brass a little polish. Always polish the brass. It makes you feel better. It's my motto. Anyway, that looks pretty good. And it fits, as I recall, it fits like this. I'll have to go back and refer to my notes, but I'm pretty sure that's it. On the other hand, it might be the other way. I don't know. Anyway, I'll figure it out. Yeah, got these fiber washers to put back on. These guys here. And a little copper washer, copper plated washer at least, which also goes on there. And 3 circlips. So I can't get out of there. There's my delicate tool. Okay, so these guys have to be replaced, and one felt washer for lubrication goes somewhere. Can't remember where, but I'll refer back to my drawings and we'll figure it out. The felt washer goes on there, thusly, and the fiber washers go on each of the posts, like that. Then this goes on like that. And these little guys go on there. Where'd it go? Come on. I know these circlips are very effective. They're also a huge pain in the neck to get on and off. It's probably some special tool I don't have that makes this really easy. But I don't have it, so it's not really easy. And one more. And there you have it. And this hangs underneath so that play, you might see a little bit of play right there. It really doesn't matter because it'll hang from this bracket underneath the turntable with the shaft poking up. And that should do it. Looks pretty good. Got no parts left over, so it's always a good sign. I think we're good to go. So we have a motor. Very good.